So this is against ASCP. And so you can see the rating here is 3108. Actually, at one point it was 3200. A couple of things. So I know that RTP talked about ASCP in his video where he was talking about me. A couple more things about ASCP. Absolutely the strongest computer ever played on Fix of any variant. It achieved the highest rating of any player on Fix in any variant over all the years that Fix existed. When I played it at 1-0, it had lost to a human twice, and both of those had been in the 90s before Engram. ASCP stands for Engram's Suicide Chess Program. Engram was a player that made this engine. And he said that nobody had beaten it. No human had beaten ASCP on his new version. Like, he had improved it.
Yeah.
For since 1998 at that point. And so I said, all right, well, I'm just going to play 1-0 against this thing. I knew I would just get killed, but it was like, let's, of course, like we said, there's no stock fish. If I play this thing, let's see what it does.
Yeah.
Let's see how it responds. Let's see how it does, reacts to different positions and these sorts of things. And so anyway, so this game is a 1-0 game where I beat ASCP. I ended up beating it a few times, but this was, I think, the one I liked the best. So we'll run through this.
What year was this?
This was 2006 or 7, I want to say. It's like right around there, like mid 2000s when this happened. And so, of course, I play A3. Like I said, stay on theory.
Yep.
You don't play C4 against ASCP. You don't play A4. You don't play B3. You don't play anything against ASCP except E3. You're going to lose. I mean, you have no chance if you play another one. So E3 every time. So this was a weird line, actually. So he went here and I take. And what I'm going for here is I'm actually trying to get a little bit of weakness towards B7 in terms of challenging with my queen. Mm-hmm. And I liked pushing the bishop back here because of this. So now his king is out and I'm loving queen to F3 because I'm looking to challenge B7 such that he can't protect his king.
Right, so you can steal that.
Right. The only thing that makes me nervous here is what I just talked about a minute ago. Can he create a queen versus rook race? I don't want to do if I'm going to do a queen, if there's going to be a race, I'd rather be my queen and his rook.
Right.
But it's ASCP. I'm like, please don't do that, And so he does that, which I was pleased with. I take here, and of course he goes, and I'm like, I almost resigned. I remember that. I was like, oh, good grief. I'm like, he's found some crazy win. And so he takes, I take, he takes. And right here, I knew this was the critical move, right? If he takes on E3, then he wants to end the race. That means he knows the race. He's worked out that the race is a loss for black. If he takes on C1, the game is over.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He takes on C1, it means he's found a way that you're going to lose.
We don't see
right.
it.
So right here, he does. So now he's told me that he knows he had a losing spot. And I'm feeling pretty good because I'm about to take a piece gain on him.
Yeah.
Right here. So now he's got this spot where I'm going to end up with the rook, the knight, and the bishop, and he's going to end up with the rook and the knight. And so here I'm going, all right, this looks okay to me. Also, and I'm just going to remind the people watching this again, this is 1-0. So I'm playing against this guy. I mean, I don't have a lot of time. He's, of course, a computer. ACP is never going to lose on time. Okay. Yep. And so I've got to work this out. I'm like, all right, how am I going to do this? So what I start looking at is I want to get my pawns on F2 and F2 and G2. I want them pushed down, and I want that knight to be forced to do something, to be lost. I want that knight to get lost. And I felt like if I had a 3-1 piece advantage at that point, particularly with his pawns all spread out like they are,
Yeah.
I said, this is looking good. Like I might be able to do this. Keep in mind, I'd never beaten the thing before, and no humans had beaten it in like 10 years or something. So I was like, well, we'll see. But anyway, so I start doing that. So he goes there. I'm pushing there. I'm trying to make him do something. So he pushes it back. Looking back on it, that was a panic move. I probably should have just done F4. But anyway, he does that. I go here and he goes back here. And I'm right there. That is a computer tell.
Yeah.
The computer does that. It means he knows he's lost.
He has, yeah. And if he's just moving back and forth, there's nothing. He's not safe.
He doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So he's trying to create a draw or just stall it out. And so I knew that. So when he went back, I said, okay, let's go for it. Because I could go for the draw right there, right? I could just move back and forth and he'd probably do it.
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm not doing that. Even though it's 1-0, I don't care. I want to beat this stupid thing. And so it worked. So his knight's gone now. He's got disparate pawns, 1 rook. I have 3 pieces and three pawns together.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I think I got this thing. So here we go. I'm like, all right, he's got that over. That's fine with me. And so of course I'm hoping he drops the rook. He goes back and he starts doing that stuff. I'm like, he's lost. So here I do drop this because when I go here, I'm looking at that e-file. I'm like, I'm going to break that rook over and his rook is going to have no choice.
Yeah.
I figured he would push. I thought he was going to push d5 right here to make it so that, he wouldn't be forced to take the knight with the rook if I like right here. If he pushes d5 right there, maybe he doesn't have to give up the rook.
Yeah.
But he went ahead and did it. And I was like, all right, let's not screw this up. Basically, because now it's time, right? Like I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure that I'm doing this right. But that clock is the clock is coming down. And so here he goes. And he did right here. This was a critical position for move for me. I did not want him to promote that G pawn. I wanted it gone.
Yeah.
And so I looked for a second. I actually took the time. I remember doing this to make sure I couldn't screw this up. But I did that because I was like, that pawn's got to go.
Yep.
And so now it's just academic.
That is incredible.
So it was, but yeah, I mean, it was like, I remember I was like, I was like, I guess I did it. I mean, it was like, I couldn't believe it because I mean, ASCP, when I would watch ACP, like if you look at its record, so the second best computer on Fix was Pendakas at Suicide.
Yep.
It had about a 2,800, 2,900 rating. I have a bunch of wins against Pendakas. This thing absolutely obliterated Pendakas. Like Stay Alive, all the other computers, like ASCP just ate them alive. I mean, it was such a great engine. I'll note this, by the way. I've spent a little time with Stockfish. It's a great computer, and I mean, it's really a great resource. ASCP would wipe the floor with Stockfish. Like Stockfish is not tactically like it's really good at the openings. Obviously it's great at seeing like how to create sort of tactical positions a little bit, but not the way that ACP did. It's just my opinion. I've played it enough. And maybe my experience with Stockfish is I have not played Stockfish, but I've played around with it a lot. I think ASP would probably just kill it. I wish I could find Angram actually to see if he would bring ACP onto Lichess just to see what it would do. But
yeah, I would like to see that type of match. All right, so 2 questions or 2 comments.
Yeah, sure.
One, I haven't played a lot of computers to see that type of behavior, but I will say I've never seen a computer panic like that, where it's just moving back and forth. Like I've never seen that before. And like you were saying, stay on theory. That's not how I play. I get off theory. So the computer knows how to beat me immediately. Like it knows how to beat me right away. And then second, so when you beat it, like, what did you do? Like, did you like stand up and throw your hands in the air? What'd you do?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. So if you remember on Fix, your history only showed your last 10 games.
Yeah. So you stopped.
And so it would show whatever your last 10 games were, you could type history and it would show you like how you did, like in those games, whether it was a win or a loss. and I had my history with ASCP straight down the screen, minus, 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 plus. And I was like, I almost didn't play for a few days because I didn't want my history to change.
Yeah.
Of course, I journaled the game.
Yeah.
But I was like, yeah, I've got a plus against ASCP in my history. I was like at 1-0. I was like, and I went on, I played ASCP more. I got another win against it at 1-0, but it wasn't as satisfying, I guess, as this one. It was more, I would almost call it like a Pyrrhic victory. It was like this weird position where it basically outplayed me. I ended up with a king, but its position was really weird, and I maximized it and managed to win. And it was sort of a goofy win, but nonetheless, it was still a win against ACP. But this one was much more satisfying because like you said, it panicked. Like I had it in a position it didn't know what to do. It was like it knew it was lost, and it was like that was pretty satisfying.
Well, it's cool too that you recognize it too. Like you saw the tell.
Right. And I will tell you, when you're playing, you've lost that many times to this thing, and you have a chance. It was very difficult to not take the draw, by the way. Like I mean, very difficult. I mean, the decision was made in like a second, but I was like, if I keep moving these, it's going to make a draw, and I'll have a draw against ACP. It was pretty cool. And I was like, but let's just forget it. Let's just go for it, and I did, and it worked out.
That gambling attitude.
Yeah.
It
was.
Yeah.
So that was that. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
All right. So we got a few more games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next one is, so if you can see over here, this is Build TV, which some of you, if you've seen RTP's video about the early guys from the 90s, was really a great player. I mean, he was very highly respected, one of the early theory guys. And so when I started playing, I looked up to him, as I mentioned earlier, and really wanted to play him. I didn't get to play him very much, but I remember I got to play a few series with him. And this particular game was kind of neat for me because it proved to me that I could play with a guy like him, and I could tactically match up with someone who was that good. And that was a good feeling because at the time I wasn't sure yet whether I could play with someone this good. And so we'll just run through this. This is, keep in mind, those of you like from Lee Chess who didn't play on Fix, this is early opening theory. I mean, you're going to see this opening and go, what is this opening? It's like, just one you've not seen before. Like, this is kind of these were sort of older openings. I don't know that anybody plays this exact opening anymore, but nonetheless, that's what this was. And so right here, so what Build TV has done right there is he didn't want me to get down and take the G7 pawn and get my queen in there where I could potentially cause issues. So he just moves the king over to try to, but I actually really liked that he did this because he isolates the pawn on E, which I'm talking to the intermediate master himself, but having open pawns like that, they're just targets, right? They're so great when you can tactically, when you look at something, you say, it's nice to have them there. And so I was actually pleased that he did that. So anyway, I sort of start setting up this. I'm actually looking I think to try to like get to maybe F5 to open up maybe a bishop to threaten the bishop coming out. So here's the critical move, right? And those of you watching, if you like suicide puzzles, this is a great puzzle, this position right here. So he's attacking the knight right by the king, which a lot of people do because they know the king can't get away from the target. And so they just do that, and then you trade the pieces. And additionally, there's no follow-on take for the bishop. There's no piece behind it that you could, maybe do another target to make it do an intermediate and take the one behind it. So in this case, there's just a knight. So my tactical mind looked at it and said, well, I think we can make something out of this. And so I used there to make a second target on A2. And then my little target that I liked is right there, right? So he takes on A2, take back on E6, and he has to take the bishop, and it's over, at that point. So it's I like this puzzle because of, it's a lot of people see positions like this. And I think as you've talked about, like you should never be putting bishops on A6 and H6 and attacking things and, trying to create, putting them out there to attack a piece, because you can get yourself in trouble without even realizing it. And this one was definitely tricky, but and then so it just runs from there. It's just a simple win at that point. But
yeah, definitely 2 thumbs up from me for that intermediate.
Yeah, that was fun, and it's cool too because it was against such an old school player and all that kind of stuff. So that was a neat game. I thought you guys would like to see. And then so now let's go. This is a modern game. And it's against the Unknown Guy Reborn. And I'll just say right now, when I got on Lichess, right away, like they have all these little messages of different people doing stuff, and I see like people talking about Unknown Guy Reborn, and I see like fan clubs of like the Unknown Guy Reborn, and I was like, who's this guy? And I'm like, so I jumped down and I see the list of like the best players, the anti-chess players on Lichess, and at that particular day, he was the top rated player on there. And I was like, wow, okay, this will be interesting. I want to see this guy play. And I was talking to you and you said, hey, there's a tournament starting. And I literally had just joined Lichess. I didn't even know tournaments. I didn't know anything. And so you're like, well, there's a tournament starting. It was the daily, or not the daily, the hourly 2-0 tournament at 9 p.m. Eastern. And so I just jumped into it. And I'd played like a few games. You know, my rating was still not even 2,000 at this point. And I get matched up like first or second game with the Unknown Guy Reborn. I knew his name because I'd seen it already. I was like, oh my gosh. All right. And so it turned out to be an interesting matchup because it's one of these positions where you get into a spot where the other side creates super complexity by having a bunch of attacking pieces. So you feel like you've got the win somewhere. There's got to be a win in here, but it's so complicated. It's so easy to make a mistake, you know? And so it's kind of like the other side putting the tempo on you. And Unknown Guy Reborn does a great job of that in this game. It just happened to work out for me, but I'll run through this. So this opening right here for black, this is played a lot these days, and I think it's a very effective opening against e3. It's forced, you know, if you want it to be, it will be, you know, against e3. And it's great because black can create super complexity for white. It's probably not a great opening if you're playing a standard time control, like a long time control or some world championship or something like that. But if you're playing 1-0, 2-0, you know, any of the faster time controls, I think it's very effective. I mean, it's because it puts all the pressure on white. Like white has to do everything, you know. So here I think I knew 0 openings at this point. Like I literally haven't played Suicide in 10 years when I was doing this. So I was like, I don't remember anything. I was like, all right, well, I think that was just pure instinct. So I'm sure I did this wrong. But anyway, I came out here, does this. We trade around here. He does that. And I bring this out. I'm trying to not let him totally, I don't want to start a whole fireworks, as I knew he was trying to. Does that, which I thought was an interesting move. I was like, I wasn't exactly sure what to do with it. So I just kind of left it alone. And then he does that. So now he's done what I've just described, right? Now he's got the bishop open. Everything's challenging g4, the knight and the bishop. The queen's going to go away on d2.
Right.
And interestingly, both the A and C pawns, if he pushes them, they're going to have to be taken by his knight. That's why I thought the knight was an interesting move to b6. But nonetheless, it's still a complicated position. And I was not about to fall for it. To try to go for some, like, you know, he wants me to do g4. Well, I think he wanted me to g4, but I wasn't going to do it, you know. So I did that, which I thought was a little bit safer. He does that. Now he blocks the white bishop, opens the dark bishop. So now I respond by, I did that. I did go to e4 because now he's got to do something with that knight on h6. It's got to either move back or it's got to do something. Yep. And so he does that again to create complication, right? So even if I go on g4, he's thinking I've got the knight now challenging down here. There's sort of a whole lot of stuff going on. And my thought was, okay, but the knight attacking d2 is a red herring because you can just take back and you're not going to take the knight if you get it out of h6, which I did. So here, I don't care about him taking the king. I'm just going to keep it going and keep the complexity low if I can.
Right.
So here he takes here. So now again, I'm just going to keep doing it. Keep the complexity low. And to make it even better, move the king. move the target away from the knight. Now that knight is neutralized the one on C4. And now I just have to play around with the one, the other knight, the one on F2.
Yep.
So he's there. Got rid of that bishop. Get that bishop or that knight up there. Then use this one to go here. But notice, just backing up for a second, all I'm doing here is like I'm controlling what's happening. So if I move the bishop out to h6 like I did, he has to do that. It's a guaranteed move. You don't want to do any of these moves where you give them suddenly they can take on multiple places. Like just keep it a single game. Like the bishop, one thing right here, one thing right here, one thing, one thing, one thing. So just keep on task, but if you start creating all this, multiple takes and all this stuff, that's where you get yourself in trouble, especially against a player like him. I mean, he is uber talented. And so I felt, I couldn't believe I won it. I mean, I almost felt like I beat ACP or something. I was really surprised I won actually, but it was an interesting game. And playing in those complex spots, I've found over the years that the way that you do it is what I said. You have to de-escalate it, make it simpler. Don't make it more complex, when you're in those spots. So,
yeah. And one thing, so real quick about Tugger, like he's one of the fastest players on Lichess today. In my opinion, he's the fastest as far as playing wicked fast, but then always playing smart. Like he's rarely ever making any mistakes. And he'll take risks and kind of play sort of like random stuff where he's moving out and opening things up. But that guy is so fast. He's one of my favorite players to watch and play. And when I'm trying to compare old players and new players, I kind of thought that he kind of reminded me of you a little bit as far as just being able to play really fast, but then always still top of the game. I'm making really smart moves and doing that. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's a good comparison. I think of him. I think his game actually is like yours, and I think it's like. Actually, think it's like Mr. Pink in many ways, and that kind of just brutally effective, speedy style. But I mean, I've enjoyed playing with him already, and that kind of stuff, and just watching him play has been really fun. And speaking of which, I'm actually looking forward to him playing a Rimicat in the World Championship. That'll be interesting. Yeah. The next game here, no, we're not gonna do that one. That's actually you and me back in the day that you and I talked about earlier. This is Kex, Kex09, who is, I love Kex. The guy's the friendliest, most helpful guy. He was so nice to me, and he is so good. I watched him play right off the bat, and I was again, him, Tugger, those guys. I was these guys are so good. And I love his C4. I love his C4 theory and what he's been doing with that. I think is really, really cool.
And let me jump in real fast. Kex is another one that I'm impressed with, just because I basically saw him grow in his anti-chess, where he started off as 1500, 1700, and he was in the arenas playing and playing and playing, and he just kept getting better and kept getting better, and he continues to get better. He's doing studying, and he's innovating and coming up with new moves and different lines, and he's got a good grasp of the game. It's fun to watch him.
Oh, he is very, very good. He's a lot of fun to play. I think he's just great. I picked this game because it has a few different things that are fun and interesting to look at. Some intermediates and some interesting moves, and then a kind of neat ending. So let's go ahead. And this is 1-0, which is good. Score C4. And I violated your rule here. Bishop to D6.
In the opening, sometimes it's okay. You can usually get rid of.
Yeah, this is.
It's on the first 5 moves.
I'll admit, this is kind of a junk opening by me, but nonetheless, it is what it is. He's coming down here, and we're still kind of. I actually was pleased we didn't get into a queen race. That was really right back here. sometimes the players are going to go for queen race and c4. But he didn't really have the chance to here. And I was just glad he dropped it there. I was like, great, because I don't like playing queen races, frankly. I avoided them for all those years against computers and everything. I certainly avoid them now, particularly against a player as talented as Kex. I'm not going to try it if I can avoid it. And so he goes here, and then I like this, by the way. I like getting in here and kind of messing around with, if I can, the setup on A, B, and C1. But
infiltrating with the queen and kind of ruining their position because you can kill off the little pieces and make it harder for them.
That's right. But he handled it well. So I ended up going over here. And this is kind of a tough spot for me. I'm not feeling too good at this point. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a little bit ugly. So I brought the knight to avoid obviously the rook opening up. And of course, he pushes the pawn to bring the pressure. But I started to see right away that I didn't see an easy way for him to make it all come together. But I went ahead and did that, open up the bishop to hopefully trade on the other side. But he keeps on message here, presses here. And I've got the knight to avoid the rook. Here, if he goes knight to f3, I think he's got me. But I think we both were focused on that h file. Mm-hmm. And so he did that. And it's a little intermediate here, but there's no follow-on. It's a nice little intermediate where he pushes here with the bishop, on the opposite side of it, going there, like onto a f4. But there's no follow-on here, because now he doesn't have anything to do, because the knight, of course, is blocking the rook and everything. So he ends up having to trade off the rook for the knight. And now we're in a bit of a spot here. So I start putting pressure on the knight, of course. He advances. And then here is the, if you're doing a suicide puzzle, what's your move? Of course, it's rook to h5. Takes. Now, this is not a forced win, though. Right here, this is not I don't believe it is, at least in terms of like a simple just bang, boom, 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 he's got it. Yeah. I don't think there is one here, but and somebody can prove me wrong. I didn't see it right away. And so this was kind of a neat little ending too, because I was a little concerned. I was like, well, these two pawns, he might be able to find a way
kind of like
to split them. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, well, let's move the A one and see what happens. Just kept moving that one. Now he's got him here, so I had to keep moving. Had to move it, and I'm like, I saw he's going to split me, but it doesn't matter because there's no file beyond A, right? Yeah. And so, and that's that. But it was kind of a fun game, and I thought it was kind of a neat the way that it ended with the rook But the real lesson is that when these speed games, when you have those, again, if you have a pawn out there, it's just a target. Yep. That's all that pawn was on A. For me, it ended up being the target I needed to create that. Well, we were in an end game basically at that point, but it was essentially an intermediate where it's like, using the target to get out of the spot, and and in 1-0, you have to be aware of those things if you want to play at a higher level. You've got to see those and use those targets, when you can. So that was kind of a fun game. So,
yeah, I like that game because you guys are both using intermediates, using intermediates as tactics. So.
Yeah, it was good stuff. That was definitely fun.
All right, well, friend, thank you for showing us these games. It was awesome. It was great reconnecting with you. 20-ish years of being apart or whatever. And so I'm excited that you're back, and hopefully you stick around and get some more games on. So.
Yeah, man. Thank you for doing this. Thank you to RTP and you guys for spending the time. And I don't know if you know this, but the only reason I came back was because Mr. Pink reached out to me on email and said, hey, you should watch this guy's video. Yeah. And I watched the video, and that's the whole reason I started playing again. And it's been really nice to actually play again. Certainly great to connect with you and others. And it's fun. And thanks a lot, for having me on.
Yep. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.